Hello everybody, welcome back to another video of Reddit! Now I will say this, last day on my old PC, so I will be able, and finally I will be able to record video games again after this Friday. So, anyways, we'll be reading the story that I mentioned earlier that was quite lengthy and that would need its own story because even after reading the first paragraph, the creator, which is u/cd0803, said this is a long story, so he will write it in a long. He also said that his grammar is bad, so that he apologizes. I'll be reading this, and depending how long it takes me will depend if I read about another 2 stories like last time. It is about him being stalked and that he, in quotes, my stalker was watching me way closer than I thought. Now, I will say this. Hope you enjoyed the first video. If you didn't, that sucks. I feel bad. But I do hope you like it. So, here we go. I'm originally from East Coast, but I'm currently a freshman attending college in Los Angeles. Due to the virus that shall not be named, the dorms were closed and classes virtual, but I ended up coming to LA. I was getting an apartment. Sorry. But I ended up coming to LA. Anyway, getting an apartment close to campus. I'm an 18-year-old male. I was really excited to move across the country and live in my own. In a city, got a taste of adulthood for a year. I wasn't completely alone though. I had friends from the past who also ended up in LA. My friend Tommy was a close friend that I had made at camp for years. A close friend that I made at camp. Okay, so he did say he had bad grammar. Okay, so that's not me messing up. Back in the day, the 3 of us had been very close. Felix had decided to take the year off and make music with his friends in LA, and my apartment building was only about 8 buildings down from Felix. However, with my packed weeks and free weekends, our schedules were nearly the opposite, with his weekends busy with work and his relative freedom during the week. As a result, I ended up growing partially close to Tommy, and we would alternate who went where due to a 20-mile Uber ride between us. Keep in mind, oftentimes Tommy and I would hang out with Felix and his other friends. Whenever Tommy came to my area of the city with all the background, you should have a good idea of context that this incident happened in. My apartment was about 5 minutes walk from a downtown area with restaurants, grocery stores, and coffee shops, and a barista. When I first moved in fall, I took advantage of the pleasant nights in contrast to my home's often harsh climate by taking long walks at night. Through the harsh climate, through the well-lit and populated streets to explore and get familiar with my new neighborhood. LA is a beautiful city with dynamic culture and unbeatable weather, but it does have the constant and often harsh reminder of homelessness, many of whom have mental illnesses and have otherwise been discarded by society. I've grown to despise indifference that is shown towards them by people on the street who avoid their eyes at all costs as if their life depended on it. Particularly during the first week, I was crossing a major boulevard when I noticed a man who appeared to be homeless in a wheelchair with one of his wheels caught in deep pothole. He wasn't making any noise, but he was flailing frantically. I was far behind him and could not believe that people were just walking past him, looking down at their phones as they passed him. I wasn't even going to make it to the other side in accordance with crossing time myself, but I expected surely someone around me would help him, but people still passed without acknowledging him. I was so frustrated I ended up yelling to people ahead of me in a crosswalk and got a middle finger back. I asked him if he needed help, and he still didn't talk, but he nodded. He was crumpled into what seemed like a wrinkled but finely made tuxedo jacket. I could only see his fuzzy backlash gray hair thrashing in the clothes. I got his wheel out of the pothole and quickly wheeled him across the street. As I got him onto the sidewalk, he abruptly turned to me, exposing his face to me only inches from my face. I pulled away, both because he was way too close in me in the middle to make, and also because it was his startling face. He was a tan, deep, worn tan, with deep sun wrinkles. Like you would imagine an old people, you mean an old person, at Florida Beach, forming what looked like a mask. His face was sunken deeply into his head and completely dead. I mean, completely vacant. It didn't feel like he was looking at me, but though at me. Get the hell away, he growled in a voice that was so raspy it didn't even sound human. Scoffed at the man and continued walking, assuming that would be the last I would ever see him, especially in a city of 4 million people, and considering I pass hundreds of strangers a day, I will never see him again. I continued on my life for some time, and had forgotten about him entirely. But unfortunately, that did not last long. To walk to the grocery store, I have to pass through an area, great amount of foot traffic. In this area, one afternoon, I spotted a man far in front of me that was soon to pass me, walking oddly. It wasn't exactly a limp. It was almost like he was drunk. It wasn't until closer that I recognized his blank eyes, and I firstly here. There was no wheelchair in sight there, and something about the man that raised major red flags in me. Maybe it was the vacancy of his eyes, or maybe just some judgmental gut instinct that told me to get away. I tried to reserve as much judgment as I could, because I figured he likely had some sort of mental illness. I was hoping to pass him quickly without acknowledgement, but when I got beside him, he stopped walking, causing me to momentarily pause. I sent a shiver down my spine, but I smiled at him, and he quickly kept walking. After that incident, I saw him many more times, and every time he had turned to my direction, I learned to ignore it, and I barely registered it. Eventually, he went away for a while, and I foolishly thought that was the last of him. Months after I stopped seeing him, Tommy was supposed to come over to my apartment. We were supposed to pick up alcohol for all of us before going over to Felix and his friend's apartment. Turning out, as we were about to enter the liquor store, I could see that the tall man with the tuxedo jacket was standing at the intersection several feet past the store. I was somewhat disappointed he had come back, but it wasn't the end of the world, especially because I was with Tommy and he learned to ignore him. I didn't even bother to explain the situation to Tommy, though. Anyway, we had just checked out of the left. Homie, what? I mean, I'm not good at English, but what? We had just checked out and left the store, taking a left to a nearby intersection away from one I originally spotted him at. And guess who was standing at the crosswalk? My heart sunk, knowing it would only be 3 of us waiting for a cross sign to change. Tommy was talking to me, completely naive to the situation, but I could see the man beside him turn to us. Tommy saw my face change and he turned to the man. Tommy quickly turned back to me, giving me a look upon seeing the man's face. The sign finally changed and we walked quickly across the street. Tommy continued talking to me, but at that point I was rattled. Up until that point, I had never had such direct, prolonged contact with a man. Are good, Tommy asked. I explained to him that I was seeing the man everywhere, all across my area of the city, that every time I would see him, he'd stare at me. Tommy didn't really take me seriously, and even clowned on me for being so worried. We got to Felix's house, and Tommy soon forgot about the incident. We were hanging out, but I didn't. We all got fairly drunk, but I couldn't shake the nagging sense of dread. Eventually, around 2 a.m., Tommy had taken an Uber back to his apartment, and many of the guys were going to bed. Honestly, I was still quite buzzed and irritably afraid to walk that late at night. Unlike dozens of other nights that I've done the exact same, I was comforted by reminding myself that I have only seen him in commercial areas, not the residential blocks around it where we were. There were 2 cross streets between our buildings, and the walk usually takes about 2 minutes, and that night I was particularly paranoid and harried. The streets were nearly empty, and being that deep into the night and all, I passed one of the cross roads, but as I got closer to the next one, I saw a figure sitting on the curb, the intersection, diagonal form. The one I was about to reach, my heart started pounding, but I assured myself it could just be a drunk college student. As I got closer, I could see the whole white streaks in the man hair. You know, those moments when you see something so shocking that you get momentarily tunnel vision? It was exactly that. And combined with my drunkenness, I almost fell over once I realized who it was. I turned around and wondered if I should run back to Felix's apartment. The man rose his head from his lap, glaring at me, his empty eyes. That moment is one of the only moments in my life that I felt genuinely in danger. I got to the intersection hesitantly, pausing at the sidewalk, opening the intersection, expecting him to stand, but he didn't. He stayed sitting on the curb, seemingly waiting for my decision. I looked down at the crosswalk and wondered if I should walk around the block so that he wouldn't know where I lived. Part of me just wanted to sprint to my building 200 feet ahead of me. My apartment building was large enough that he would never know my apartment number, but still, the thought of him knowing my address was unsettling. I was running through my choices in my head when I thankfully heard two guys approach the intersection from the opposite end of the curb. They were both drunk, but when they saw him, they looked at him and both looked at each other, then looked at me frozen. "There you guys are," I yelled at them, beckoning them down the street road. They picked it up almost immediately, then yelled, "Hey, back." Quickly passing him as we walked down from the intersection, one of them asked if it was okay. I explained to them what was going on, knowing that they wouldn't remember in the morning after a continuous flow of bro. We had reached the street parallel to mine. They reached their building and said goodbye to me, and I was alone again. It had been 3 by that point, and I was exhausted. So I decided to sprint to my building from the other direction than where he was, so I could quickly slip into my building. When I got to the door, I couldn't help myself and looked at the intersection. As I unlocked the door and he was gone, I quickly opened the door and closed it behind me. I pressed the elevator cell button, anxiously watching outside the door through the glass wall. I didn't feel safe until I got back into the elevator, after which I left the biggest sigh in relief. I never told my parents this story. They were already so nervous about me living on my own so far away that they would lose their minds. Likely would have also made me come back home if I told them. After that fiasco, I stayed in my apartment for a few days, working from there instead of going out in public. A few days and I realized I was being ridiculous and left to get coffee in town. Luckily, he wasn't there for weeks. I continued to walk through the commercial area without any sight of the man. Weeks turned to months, which turned to an academic terms. I had gone home during this winter for winter break, and when I came back, I still had yet to see him again. After enough time, I was assured he was gone. Maybe he was trying to scare me, and he was satisfied after doing so that night. So he went on to another victim. Once again, I made the stupid, naive assumption that he was gone. By the time it was late into the spring term, and people had started to go back into their homes all over the country, a couple of weeks before I left LA, Tommy and I were hanging out one last time the night before he was flying home. I had grown to appreciate Tommy's apartment. It was one of the only places I felt entirely safe due to it being so far away from my neighborhood of the city. I had previously told Tommy about the incidents that occurred the night, and he finally believed me after that. The night of the final incident, I was over at his apartment, and the night was so normal that it could be late into that. How is that? The night was so normal it could be late into the night. Tommy and I had decided to take a walk to a 24-hour donut shop a couple blocks north of this building. Man, that would suck to work at. I will also give my opinion once I'm done reading. Yeah. We got to the shop pretty quickly and ordered our donuts. We were only one in the shop except for the two other employees, so we were served almost immediately. As we left the shop, Tommy turned around now, and it was his face who dropped. Tommy was the kind of person that when he has a look of dread, you are far up bad alley. Okay. He used a phrase that I'm not going to say. Without a paddle. I turned around in response and felt like I was going to faint. Standing under the dim light of the donut shop was the man. Standing under the dim light was the man. I apologize. I got a phone call that I had to answer, so for you, I might have just repeated the same thing twice, but I was trying to pause the video. So, again, one last time, and I apologize. Standing under the dim light of the donut shop was the man in the same dirty flip-flops, wife-beater torn pants pulled up to his chest and tuxedo jacket I couldn't associate him with. He stood there, staring at us. Not us, me. This time his eyes weren't empty. They were focused on mine, like a laser, and I could see the fury behind them. Tommy and I were silent for a second. Both of us frozen. I looked at Tommy and mouthed to him, "Run." In that second, the two of us sprinted back to his apartment, our fastest possible speed. Tommy looked back, but when he was flashing his card to get past the locked door, I could see the man's uneven gait walking down the sidewalk towards us. The door unlocked and we ran into the lobby, slamming the automatically locking door behind us. We sprinted up the stairs to his floor, where we caught our breath in the hallway. Tommy had a look of disbelief in his eyes, and I was shaking with adrenaline. To this day, I have absolutely no clue how the man could have gotten 20 miles and knew exactly where we were. And I have required such deep surveillance. I felt like I was going to puke thinking about it. It required such deep surveillance. Tommy was rattled and gladly left Los Angeles the following day. I was there for another week, but I was busy with finals, and picking that, I didn't leave my apartment. I don't think I will ever know what the man wanted from me, or why he harassed me for months. By no means is this supposed to deter people from helping the less fortunate, but in the rare instances, good deeds can come at unknowingly dark cost. I like to be noble and say I don't regret helping him, but I do. When I come back to Los Angeles in the fall, I'll be in the dorms, as well as Tommy. Somehow the man was able to follow me 20 miles, so what is to say he won't also find me in the dorms, only a few hundred feet from my old apartment. I can't call the police. What would I say? The man hasn't technically done anything wrong, and furthermore, LA was filled with vagrants far out of the light of police. I won't tell my parents, because they'll kill me knowing I kept it from them the whole year. I can only wonder what will happen to me. And that was it for this story. I think I will only read this one story for the episode, as a special edition because it was so long. Eventually I'll be able to read faster and give more scary vibe instead of a campfire. Maybe play scary music in the background while I have something, I don't know. But what I think this story shows is that, yes, you should help people, but you were stalking as a crime, and at that point, it would have been considered stalking, so you should have went to the police and told them that you were being stalked and gave a description, because you literally saw him so much that you have him engraved in your brain. You could have literally gotten one of those artists that you describe and they draw him for you, and then bam. But besides all of that, I think you did a lot of things correctly. I don't think you should have gotten the donuts at the 24 thing. I mean, yeah, I understand you guys already thought he was gone, but I just don't trust big cities late at night. That's just me. Now, smart move for seeing the two drunk people. Yeah, very smart move. Yeah, this is all. Please like and subscribe. Don't leave any hate. Don't hate on other people. Just care about yourself, and happy Pride Month.